Hey, and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So this may be some bad news for some of you, but the Slab of Vecna, the mount combat power, is finally getting fixed. Not right now, but it has been confirmed that it at least will be. This mount originated from the Summer Festival. During the 3 weeks of the Summer Festival, you were able to purchase this from the Wondrous Bazaar for your 3 million Astral Diamonds, or discounted by 25% if you had full rank 12 VIP. So it was quite the expense, and the reason people bought it, I think, primarily, was because of my testing. It was basically dealing 90% more damage than it should when the enemy didn't deflect. This was kind of crazy and a big deal breaker when you look at this combat power versus similar ones that you would use in single target versus a boss. It says it only has 2400 magnitude and would increase the damage you deal by 15% for 10 seconds after casting it. This, in most cases, if it worked just normally the way it does, would not be as worth it compared to, let's say, the Giant Toad 3000 magnitude. Just bam, massive hit in the burst window. Or Big B's Hand, which is the same against the boss, adds up to 3000 magnitude. Then you have other powers like Tunnel Vision, also 3000 magnitude, or the Golden Warhorse with that 3000 magnitude as well. So there was nothing better than these, and this mount on the surface did not look like it should be any better. Only 2400 magnitude. It's not really going to be worth giving up the 600 magnitude for that 15% damage after you've cast it, at least on most classes. And on top of that, the mount wasn't working with a cleric, where this 15% would be really good. It was not working to contribute to the Prophecy of Doom, and for Whisper Knife it currently won't work for their Shadow of Demise either. It won't add this damage to that. But the real busted thing, again, as we mentioned, if you watched this video when I tested, was it dealing that like 90% more damage. Of course, that is varying dependent on your combat advantage. So if you have this combat advantage at 90%, that is when it deals 90% more damage. And then on top of that, you can reduce the enemy's awareness, which equates to basically more combat advantage damage. You use your dulled senses for that. Your fighter can reduce the enemy's awareness as well. So you're basically increasing your combat advantage, which also means you're increasing the amount the maximum hit of the Wicked Lich can deal. When you actually look at the math of this, it will average out to be about 38% more damage versus Big B, Golden Touch, Tunnel Vision, the Toad. So it was quite a big deal. That much more damage. And if you hadn't bought the mount in those 3 weeks, well, you're missing out on this much damage versus everybody else. Created a lot of injustice. The real insane part is if the enemy doesn't deflect, so we have that at 0%, they usually have 50%, this mount would deal more than 70% damage than any other mount. Absolutely crazy. Again, that's because we're reducing the enemy's awareness by like 26%. You have all these different debuffs like the Grace Ring, the Bard's Armor, your Enforced Threat from the Fighter, and your Dulled Senses. And then that gets doubled by adding to the combat advantage, which is 90% plus that 26%. So you're basically gaining like 116% multiplicative extra damage on that, which is why it results in over 70% more damage. This is the highs of it. This is why you're going from your standard mount dealing like 12.5 million to this Vecna dealing like 21.6 million. It's just freaking crazy. So there was a lot of controversy with this mount, and there still is. People will say it's fine, whatever. The problem I find with it is not that it's that broken. I mean, it is a bit of an issue, creating an imbalance with anything else you may use instead. But the main thing that other people can't get it anymore. It was limited time. You either got it or you're now missing out. And thus you can't really compete that well in damage if you're that close in terms of skill and character build. Somebody without this is going to always deal less damage than somebody with, unless you get super unlucky with deflect. Ultimately, here is the news. Finally, confirmed by the executive producer, Brett Norton, like 4 months later, that it's a known issue. They are tracking it. Sadly, it's not an easy fix, so it'll take them some time. And right now, they're just going to prioritize class buffs instead. And they hope to get to it soon. But this is finally some concrete confirmation. It's not intended to work like that, gaining double the effect of combat advantage. It also isn't affected by your accuracy stat, which does cause it to deal not great damage when the enemy deflects, but still about the same because of the double dipping in combat advantage. And then the unfortunate thing with clerics not being able to use it because it's not contributing to their Prophecy of Doom. Ultimately, very good to see. Just some confirmation on what is up with this. Everybody was throwing their opinions around, some saying it was intended, others not. And it just clearly was, not working as intended. There's no other power that double dips like that. It shouldn't benefit twice from one stat. It shouldn't not consider a certain stat like accuracy, and it's a bit of a mess, and I guess it's a bit of spaghetti in their code, and it's not easy for them to fix them. So they'll get to it eventually, but just be warned that that will happen, and don't rely too heavily on this mount, and don't be surprised when it all of a sudden doesn't have that maximum damage as you may have seen before. It will be getting fixed, and the older mounts like Golden Touch, Tunnel Vision, Big Base Hand, etc. will all be better for that single target maximum hit damage in the artifact call. So hopefully this was at least somewhat insightful to you guys. If you're making a new character, have Vecna, perhaps don't upgrade it unless you have a bunch of spare mount tokens you're willing to just waste, because this will get fixed at some point and then not really used. Special thank you again to all of these channel members for their added support. I want to see you guys around. Goodbye for now.